A man suspected of killing his ex-wife in Brown's Edition last year is now accused of murdering another man as practice. What new court documents are revealing tonight? Plus, new data claims that the Spokane Police Department is the third deadliest police department in the entire country. But where did that information come from, and is it accurate? We're breaking down the data. And robocalls are the #1 complaint to multiple government agencies. We'll explain why automation is such a huge part of the problem. Good evening and thank you for joining us for KREM 2 News at 11 tonight. I'm Mark Hanrahan. Regina is off. We start with some breaking news. Police are investigating a shootout involving possibly several suspects in North Spokane. It happened at around 8 tonight on East Wedgwood near the Northside Lowe's off Division. Initial information indicates there were a couple of dozens of rounds fired. Let's get straight to KREM 2's Casey Decker, who is live at the scene tonight. And Casey, what can you tell us?
Well, Mark, we know tonight that there are 2 people reported injured in this shooting. Originally, we only thought there was 1, but then another person actually checked themselves into the hospital with a gunshot wound, and Spokane police now believe that that injury was connected. So 2 people injured in this scene here tonight. We don't have a lot of details yet. Let's go ahead and walk through what we do know so far. Right now, we know that a little after 8 p.m., there were multiple calls to SPD reporting a shooting. Officers arrived after the shooting had already happened. They found numerous rounds, including, like you mentioned, dozens of shell casings on the ground, possibly from multiple guns. 1 person taken to the hospital then, and then, like I mentioned just a second ago, another person eventually checked themselves into the hospital. We do not know either of their conditions right now. Police are still interviewing people here and investigating. It's a pretty vast scene, a couple of blocks around this apartment complex here. Police believe that there might have been shootings happening across a few different areas within this scene right now. They're still kind of just ironing all that out. They don't know how many shooters, but because of the number of casings, they believe there could, of course, be multiple shooters. They say that there are still outstanding suspects. They haven't made any arrests yet, last we heard, and so they couldn't tell us whether or not there was really any ongoing threat. Take a listen.
Preliminarily, it doesn't seem that it's completely random, but again, motivation is something that will be continued to be investigated. So, yeah, we've got outstanding people, and this is a very violent scene. So, I can't say that there's no continued threat.
Now back here live at the scene here in North Spokane, still plenty of officers. There were definitely more than a dozen here tonight, still going around the scene and investigating. So it is still an active scene here tonight. But again, 2 injuries, which given the number of casings on the ground, that might be pretty lucky. Reporting live in North Spokane tonight, Casey Decker, KREM 2 News.
Casey, thank you very much. 36 after a woman's remains were found in Missoula County, Montana. Authorities have identified her as 23-year-old Janet Lee Lucas from Spokane. Janet's remains were found by a bear hunter back in September of 1985. Following the investigation, her remains could not be identified at the time, and she became known as Christy Crystal Creek. Using forensic genetic genealogy, a cold case unit was able to identify DNA relatives and family trees that led them to Lucas's family here in Spokane. Investigators concluded Lucas's identity through DNA testing of relatives. The sheriff's office has no record of Lucas living or spending time in Montana, and they are hoping to find anyone who may have seen her back in the summer of '83 into '84. The cold case unit is also reviewing evidence that may link her death to a known serial killer in Montana who was active at the time. Meantime, family members of Lucas released the following statement through law enforcement today saying, quote, "We are grateful to finally be able to bring her home to us, as well as to bring Janet the peace and rest she so deserves. While after 38 years, our family finally has some answers, we also realize there are questions we may never have the answers to," unquote. You can now submit crime check reports online. Crime Check Online reporting allows people living in unincorporated Spokane County to easily report nonviolent crimes that are not currently happening. And it is easy to do so. Just go to srec911.org and then click on online reporting when it pops up. Then you just fill out all the information when prompted. Right now, it's only available to those in unincorporated Spokane County, but it will be available in other jurisdictions soon, we're told. Well, you may have heard a startling statistic about the Spokane Police Department recently, a claim that it is the 3rd deadliest police department in the entire nation. So where does that number come from, and just how accurate is it? Our Casey Decker explains tonight.
The number comes from this website, mappingpoliceviolence.org. It collected data on people killed by police across America's 100 largest cities between 2013 and 2020. Spokane had 17, an average of a little over 2 per year. Then the site did some math in order to basically compare the city's death rates per capita. Specifically, it extrapolated how many deaths there would be if every city had exactly 1 million people. By those calculations, Spokane would average 9.9 killings per year, and that would in fact rank it third amongst those 100 cities.
And when you look at that at face value, that would understandably have an emotional impact on a lot of people.
Spokane's police chief, Craig Meidel, doesn't dispute the hard numbers, but he says the way the data was analyzed doesn't tell the full story. He posted a video last week that broke down some of his complaints.
Spokane does not have a population of 1 million. In order to get to that 1 million threshold that they use, we would have to multiply the Spokane population by almost 5.
He says in doing this sort of per capita math, the data basically gets skewed out of proportion.
The smaller the sample, the bigger the change you're going to see with even 1 degree of change in that sample.
For instance, Spokane police killed 1 black person over the 8-year span. But if Spokane had 1 million black people, that would equate to an average of nearly 28 deaths per year.
And though that figure may be mathematically correct based on an algorithm of a population of 1 million, when you provide the context of that data, which is using 1 African American death in 8 years, I think that gives people a different perspective.
Furthermore, by choosing the top 100 cities, Spokane gets compared to New York and LA, but not to similar-sized cities like Boise or much smaller cities. Still, the raw data does show Spokane's police force is deadlier than those in several larger cities. Those 17 deaths over 8 years, still more than we saw in places like Boston, Tampa, and Miami. That's why Meidel acknowledges there's still a lot of work to do and that managing use of force remains one of his top priorities.
We're constantly looking at different ways of honing how our officers are engaging, from our use of force review boards, which every month looks at every single use of force.
Casey Decker, KREM 2 News.
Huge news today on the vaccine front. The FDA announced its expanded emergency use for the Pfizer coronavirus vaccine to kids 12 and up. The FDA action will be followed by the advisory committee's meeting currently set for Wednesday. Pfizer says its vaccine is 100% effective for those 12 to 15. The company studied more than 2,200 young people with no positive cases among those fully vaccinated and 18 cases for those who got the placebo. And now the Biden administration says it will ship the vaccine to 20,000 pharmacies and pediatricians across the country. So all you have to do is visit your doctor. We talked to some parents today to get their reaction to the news.
Yes, if my child was 12, I would definitely sign him up. I think that's the only way we're going to get some sort of herd immunity or protect the people who are not able to get vaccines. And I think that they've proven themselves to be reasonably safe.
You know, it's COVID-19 something we haven't really dealt with, and the pandemic was pretty big and kind of put us all through a huge loop. And to try to prevent that and to get that herd immunity, I think we all need to do it.
So we want to know, parents, if the Pfizer vaccine is approved, will you let your 12 to 15-year-old get the vaccine? Let us know what you think by texting 509-448-2000. So right now we have a mix of answers, some saying they will, others saying they won't. News since 6 o'clock tonight, 3 weeks after the Coeur d'Alene School District rescinded its mask mandate. Masks now being reinstated at 3 Coeur d'Alene schools due to clusters of coronavirus cases. They have been reinstated at Canfield Middle School for 8th graders, at Woodland Middle School, and 9th and 10th graders at Lake City High School. 3 students tested positive for coronavirus at Canfield. Woodland also had 3 positive cases, but the district said it is more contained there because grades are separated. 7 students tested positive at Lake City High School. After contact tracing, all 3 schools determined students caught the illness at school. Canfield's mask mandate started today, while Woodland and Lake City's starts tomorrow. All right, let's take a break for the headlines for a moment to talk the weather. Pretty good start to the work week. Temperatures topping out in the mid-60s or so. Meteorologist Michelle Boss joining us tonight. And Michelle, I understand things just getting warmer from here on out.
Yeah, probably should be safe to put those plants out now. We did have some areas that dipped below freezing over the weekend, but we certainly have warming temperatures for this upcoming week, and I don't think we'll see any big moves backwards temperature-wise. So taking a look at the trend for the upcoming week, high temperatures were in the 60s today, but we're going to be in the 70s starting tomorrow, and the 70s are going to stick around right on into the upper upcoming weekend. As far as precipitation, wish I could say we had better chances for rain, but it doesn't look like that. A few isolated mountain showers this afternoon, a few showers in the higher terrain up in northeastern Washington right now, but that's probably the only area that's going to see any wet weather through much of this week. Here's a look at the next 12 hours. We're looking at partly cloudy skies here locally. Should be waking up to sunshine and temperatures only bottoming out in the lower to mid 40s overnight, so not quite as chilly. And we'll be back up in the 70s tomorrow afternoon, mid 70s on Wednesday. That'll be a little bit cloudier, partly cloudy skies on Thursday with highs up around 76.
Sounds pretty good, Michelle. Thank you very much. And still ahead tonight, he is accused of killing his ex-wife in Browns edition, and now prosecutors believe he killed another person first as practice.
It was absolutely not surprising to me whatsoever.
What new court documents are revealing? Coming up next after the break. Plus, robocalls, the #1 complaint to multiple government agencies, why automation is such a big part of the problem, and step-by-step directions to protect yourself after the break.